The Caitlin Clark drama has been going crazy lately, and the conversation has now shifted from Caitlin to Sheryl, Swoops, and Stephen A. Smith.
I got a lot of stuff to get into, but the first order of business is to get started with the WNBA, where the league is making headlines like never before in its 27-year history. There have been 3 players this season who've been box office. We know about A'ja Wilson. Okay, let's get that out the way. 2-time MVP of the Las Vegas Aces.
Right.
The best player in the world right now.
Right.
She's about to set a single-season points per game scoring record, averaging 27.5 points, y'all. Surpassing Diana Taurasi's 25.3 points per game, set back in 2006. That's one person. The others, you know the names. Angel Reese, the Chicago Sky forward, just set the league record for the most rebounds in a season, surpassing the mark set by Sylvia Fowles in 2018. Reese broke the record in just 32 games, so give her love and support. And last but not least is, of course, Caitlin Clark, who just led the Indiana Fever to an above 500 record for the first time in 5 years. By the way, she's the second leading scorer at 23.4 points per game over the last 12 games. The Indiana Fever owned the WNBA record for most consecutive games under 500, by the way, with 189 until recently, of course, the other day.
One thing that I've definitely had to adjust my brain to, as a guy who's been watching and keeping up with the NBA for so long, is recalibrating my head and looking at WNBA stats in the context of WNBA history. Because when you look at Caitlin Clark's numbers and compare them to NBA standards, a lot of people would actually call Caitlin Clark a pretty inefficient player that shouldn't be praised. But when you look at the stars around the league and their efficiency, she is pretty up there, especially given her volume. Same thing with A'ja Wilson, same thing with Sabrina Ionescu. Like, this is not the NBA where you got 5 to 6 dudes who could put up 30 points a night. Yeah, no, A'ja Wilson averaging 27 points, I believe, is like a top 5 scoring season ever.
The team is setting WNBA attendance records with over 500,000 fans over their first 33 games this season. Some have compared Caitlin Clark to Tiger Woods and how she's revolutionized fan engagement in women's basketball. Overall attendance, in case you missed it, is up by 20%, breaking TV viewership ratings and merchandise sales. Either way you slice it, it's clear that we're witnessing a golden era in the sport. Caitlin Clark, what'd I tell y'all? What'd I tell y'all? Now, I understand there's a whole bunch of people that's balling. How about Kelsey Mitchell, a teammate, who is just flat out balling?
Shout out Kelsey Mitchell, man.
You see what the Ace is doing, right? See, Kelsey, you just see this. Plum and the rest of the crew in Las Vegas can't ignore them. I'm looking at the New York Liberty. I'm looking at the Minnesota Lynx. I'm looking at the Connecticut Sun. I'm looking at Seattle. I'm looking at all of these teams. But they ain't the story. Look, we appreciate what they bring to the table, and we appreciate their greatness, and we appreciate what they're giving the fans. But we just have to understand that when a transformational figure enters the fray, you got to pause and then isolate and compartmentalize and give them the love that they're due. And in this case, it belongs to Caitlin Clark. Rookie of the Year race is over. She ended that Friday night. Not that she wasn't in the league to begin with, but she ended that Friday night when she dropped 31 on the Chicago Sky when they were blowing them out. Okay? She ended that Friday night. Angel Reese and her Chicago Sky, who, by the way, in 11-19 and about 8 games below 500, even though they're still tied for the 7th seed in the playoffs or what have you. We'll see what happens with that. But Angel Reese is no longer a Rookie of the Year potential winner. That's over. It's going to Caitlin Clark. Let's get that out the way. Did you know that Caitlin Clark is also in the conversation for league MVP? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you.
Why is he saying it like that? Yeah, no, I ain't gonna lie. Caitlin Clark and the way she's playing this season, which is crazy because we are still talking about a rookie. Yeah, we're talking about a player who is in conversations for WNBA first team in her rookie season. And as far as the MVP discussion, we have this thing as sports fans where we don't want to give rookies their due just because they're rookies and you know, you got to put the work in first before we start giving your accolades. You know, the accolades come year 4, year 5, year 6, year 7. But rookie, relax. We can talk about you in the Rookie of the Year race, but everything else, just relax. I think in the NBA, we saw a lot of that when it came to the DPOY conversation. By the end of the season, there were legitimate talks between who is the true defensive player of the year. Is it Victor Wembanyama or Rudy Gobert? But I feel like throughout the progression of the whole season, the NBA community was kind of reluctant on it because, like, cool, Vic is averaging 3 blocks a game, but he's a rookie, though. Like, But I'm glad we're being more progressive in these discussions, though.
You understand what I'm saying? We got the babyface assassin in men's basketball with Steph Curry. They might say that about her before all is said and done, because she pulls up from the parking lot as well. Okay, this is what Caitlin Clark brings to the table. Here's what I want y'all to know about some of the stats involving her. Average attendance in the 33 games Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever have played this season is at 15,746. That leads the WNBA, okay? Average attendance of WNBA games not involving Caitlin Clark is 8,490. So games that Caitlin Clark plays are averaging 85% more than non-Caitlin Clark games. Just throwing that out there. You need to know. You need to understand these are the kind of things that comes with it, okay? So we got to get that out the way, okay? Then you got the Fever leading the WNBA in home attendance, 16,978. Road attendance, 14,838. Indiana's outdrawing every other team by 35% at home and 36% on the road, okay? We know what she did at the WNBA All-Star game. They averaged like 3.4 million viewers on ABC. That All-Star week. I mean, come on now. This is Caitlin Clark. This is the Caitlin Clark effect. And so it's time for everybody to stand down. It's time for everybody to admit, Stephen A., you were right. You were right, Stephen A. Caitlin Clark should have been on Team USA. Should have been on Team USA. And we also write about the fact that there's been some haterade being thrown in her direction. Okay? Because there's no excuse to have resentment towards her. And see, we don't want to address the big elephant in the room, but we ain't going to run from it today.
Oh, wow.
Because Sheryl Swoops made news.
Oh, wow.
Now, she made news last week when she sat up there and was applauding Indiana Fever players, but then forgot to mention Caitlin Clark. She jumped all in my ass because I sat up there and said, hey, how you going to ignore Caitlin Clark? You know what she brings to the table. How you just going to ignore her? That's not an accident. Sheryl Swoops is a champion. A champion.
What did she say? You talk about whomever and whatever you want on your podcast, correct? So why can't I? Also, did you listen to the entire episode? Nope. I have a personal relationship with these players, and they deserve recognition as well. So for those who haven't been fully keeping up with everything going on, Sheryl Swoops actually went on a Twitter space yesterday that a lot of your NBA community members were listening to and were a part of. And essentially, she explained this point right here that Stephen A. Smith brings up, and essentially her rebuttal is the fact that we were talking about post-Olympics WNBA and the fact that the Indiana Fever really benefited off of that Olympic break, and she was just giving credit to the other players. And during that episode, essentially she just wanted to spend time giving credit to the other players on the team instead of Caitlin Clark, because the other players deserve credit, at least from her eyes, which, to be honest with you, I don't really have a problem with that. Just because of the fact that the basketball landscape as a whole has been giving Caitlin Clark a lot of credit throughout everything she's been doing. And with that being said, I feel like there has to be certain people that will be like, okay, y'all want to talk about Caitlin Clark, but let's also shine on these other players on the team as well, because it is a team sport and they are also balling the fuck out. Specifically Kelsey Mitchell. I think she's been averaging 25 to 27 points a game over these last like 10 games. She's been going stupid. Aaliyah Boston has been going crazy. Is it necessarily a diss to not mention Caitlin Clark within the vacuum of that clip? Not necessarily, and Stephen A. may touch on this very soon. There was another clip where Sheryl Swoops was the color commentator of a Dallas Wings versus Indiana Fever game, and they brought up a graphic of Caitlin Clark, and she just didn't speak. She refused to speak. The stat sheet showed she was averaging like 25, 9, and 5, and here comes Sheryl Swoops not saying anything while she is the commentator. And a lot of people gave her flack for being unprofessional in that instance, just for those who don't know the context of what's going on.
Look at her tweet and what she put up about me. You talk about whomever and whatever you want to on your podcast, correct? So why can't I? Also, did you listen to the entire episode? Nope. I have a personal relationship with these players, and they deserve recognition as well. That ain't the point, Sheryl Swoops. Yes, I did listen to your entire podcast. You didn't mention Caitlin Clark. So I was right, number one. Number two, your personal relationship, what that got to do with your coverage? Ain't nobody said don't mention them. Ain't nobody said don't applaud them. Nobody told you to ignore them. What we're saying is if you're going to give the Indiana Fever all the credit in the world, how you going to mention the Indiana Fever without Caitlin Clark's name even coming up?
I agree with that point too, because this may be a case of Sheryl Swoops being obtuse for the sake of being obtuse, right? Like, if you wanted to give credit to the other players on the Indiana Fever, and again, she is a grown woman, she could talk however she wants. I personally, in that situation, would have been like, listen, I know we're talking a lot about Caitlin Clark. You know, a lot of the attention has been on Caitlin Clark. However, let's also bring some attention. Let's also bring some light to the other players on the team. That's literally how I'd bring it up. But for you to go on a podcast and not mention her at all, on top of the other comments that you made on Gilbert Arenas, on top of the color commentating thing, you can look at it as, you know, yo, people are just looking for shit to shit on when it comes to Sheryl Swoops. Or it can be a case of, listen, you can make all the excuses you want for all of these little things that you've been doing within the sports media landscape. However, when you add all of these things up, there is a clear bias against Caitlin Clark. There is a clear... hatred's a strong word, so I can't really put that on her. But to some of y'all, there may be some clear favoritism going on here.
But then after that, Sheryl Swoops engages in levels of immaturity. There's no way to slice it. I'm not going to insult this champion, this great basketball mind, this phenomenally accomplished Hall of Famer. I'm not going to insult her. All I'm going to say is it was pretty damn immature to come back at me like that. Called me an effing coward because I called you out for not doing your job. So you on a podcast that means you don't have to do your job? I mean, the bottom line is this. She engaged in a level of immaturity. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, to just bite at me like that. Oh, why? Because what did I say? What did I say? You want to know what I said? Take a look at what I said last week about Sheryl Swoops. Respectfully, Sheryl Swoops, you have any idea how that makes you look? You have any idea how that serves to stain any kind of critique of Caitlin Clark, because that gives fodder to those who believe she's being hated on and ostracized to some degree. Do you realize that, Sheryl Swoops, you're insane to do that? Let me tell you why you're insane to do that.
Do what?
Because Sheryl Swoops, you're one of the greatest players ever in the history of basketball. That's why. See, you won a championship in college at Texas Tech. You won 3 Olympic gold medals. You won 4 WNBA championships. You know basketball. You know basketball better than me. You know basketball than any of the pundits. You know basketball better than most of the men that play basketball. There is no way in hell you just accidentally left Caitlin Clark's name out of that soliloquy that you dropped about the Indiana Fever. Stop it. You know that. Stop it. I mean, listen, the bottom line is this. There's a whole bunch of reasons that I'm quite sure Sheryl Swoops could come up with. Yeah. Who can imagine that she's got stuff on her mind? Lord knows what she's got on her mind and what she wants to express. I get all of that. People can speculate till the cows come home about what that is. But one thing that's undeniable is that she seems to get offended with her objectivity being questioned, her professional objectivity. The problem is she's the one that brought her professional objectivity into focus by her own behavior. What possible excuse could you have?
This may sound like a case of someone who's trying to appear objective and may actually believe they are the objective one. But in actuality, you do have your biases and you just got to own up to it. Because everyone has their biases. It is human nature for you to have biases based off of your life experiences. That's just life. You know what I'm saying? Certain people you relate to more than others. Certain people you will root for more than others. I think from everything that I have seen, she just has to own up to it. And it's okay. At least we know that when we hear from you, this is where you're coming from. You don't like Caitlin Clark. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, she actually believes that, but if you don't like Caitlin Clark, just say that. If you have a problem with her fan base, just outright say that. If you don't like the negativity that she's brought to the game, even though she's brought a lot of attention, just say that. So we know where you're coming from. But every time you do these little things and you get pushback and you just keep on coming up with maybe not necessarily excuses, but reasons, when you know in your heart of hearts and in the back of your mind there's bias there. I just feel like that's where the frustration from everyone else is coming from, is just be real.
Talking about the Indiana Fever and nary a mention of Caitlin Clark. How is that possible? How's that possible? You know what Indiana was before she arrived. You know what the attendance was before she arrived. You know what merchandise sales was before she arrived. You know what attendance was before she arrived. You know what the ratings were before she arrived. How could you not mention her? It makes no sense. So I can understand why Sheryl Swoops would have an attitude with people who would question her professional objectivity. But I also understand why people would look at her like she's lost her ever-loving mind. Because you're literally putting the lack of professional objectivity on display for audiences to see, and then you're looking at us acting like what's wrong. It's like you spitting in people's face telling them it's raining.
Listen, I'm not saying Sheryl Swoops needs to bow down and just kiss the feet of the glorious Caitlin Clark. I'm not saying that whatsoever. You don't have to like Caitlin, to be honest with you. You can respect the attention that she's brought to the game and still not like her. Like, I don't care. You like who you like. Like, there's certain NBA players that, you know, aesthetically speaking, just the way that they play, I just don't like. And I know she's come out and said that she doesn't necessarily dislike Caitlin Clark. But sometimes actions do speak louder than words. And as the great friend of mine, TSO Sage, has said before, if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, then maybe it's a duck. I don't know. But with that being said, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.